Uh, I miss the days where I was king fish and I had my wonderful little fish I would put on my head when I would talk about, the British fishing industry, just to show how, like, pro fisherman I was, even more so than, of course, Nigel Farage. And as I have, we haven't talked about this topic for a while, so we're probably going to bring up a lot of stuff again and um, talk about a lot of this stuff and maybe refresh people's memories. But here's the thing: since 2016, or shall we say since 2020 even more, um, the fishing industry has gotten worse. Things have gotten worse for the fishing industry because we are outside of the EU institutions. We're no longer the single market. We're no longer the customs union. We're no longer part of the common fisheries policy. All these things, right, that helped British fishermen. The fact that they could go out to sea, get a catch, turn on their, onboard computer and go, oh, if I sail to Saarbrücken, that's not Saarbrücken, no, that's in land. If I sail to, I don't know, Zeebrugge or somewhere in Brittany, I can get more for my catch than I can if I land it in the UK. Do they ever talk about that? Do they ever mention about that? The other fact that they let into that? No. And the fishing industry itself has changed. Like, most of the fishing industry jobs are not at sea anymore. They are on land. They're on land. Why? Because all these big trawlers that you see these fishermen complain about, what do those big trawlers can do in a day what it takes these small trawlers to do in a month? Now, that's just the state of fishing. It's incredibly industrialized. And most of the British fishing industry just refuse to admit that the fishing industry has had its heyday. It's gone. Things have changed. Things have moved on. Industrialization has happened to their industry, and a great many of them have not kept up. Meanwhile, of course, they dance continually to someone like Nigel Farage's tune, who says, "Oh, don't worry, if you support me, then I'll bring back the golden age of the fishing industry. The fleets will sail from Scarborough again, and Grimsby will be restored as the great fish capital of the world." It ain't coming back. It ain't coming back. Not only that, the fishing industry itself, as a share of GDP, is the equivalent to, I believe, Harrods. Right? Why on earth? Why on earth would any prime minister go to the wall for an industry that is basically the economic equivalent of Harrods? And that's just the reality of the situation. And it's fishermen refusing to admit that things have changed, things have moved on. They won't even get on board with, like, environmental standards. Eh, overfishing. You'd think overfishing, fishermen would care about that, right? Oh no. Some of the biggest things they complained about in when we're in the common fisheries policy, which, again, a lot of old videos about that. But one of the biggest things they would complain about was the fact that the EU brought in all this anti-overfishing regulation. And all that stuff to them was so burdensome, so terrible. But they're defending your industry so that there will be an industry in the future. And now here we are at the point where you've already got the heads of the fisheries associations going around saying, "Oh, Starmer's about to sell the fishing industry down the river. And your not industry isn't going to disappear overnight. The quotas that current fishermen have, they can't even catch because their boats just aren't worth it. Their boats cannot do it. And then even when they do have a quota, they complain about the fact that they've got to follow a quota. And then I love the Scottish industry, um, fishing industry guy who, bear in mind, people, SNP supporters, please go look up at the Blackfish scandal and how involved that was. And the Scottish fishing industry was heavily tied into that. And what a massive scandal that was back in the day. Although it wasn't that all long too long ago. What is it with SNP and scandals? Gee. Um, but yeah, he goes, oh, you can't compare like the fishing industry here in Scotland to defence. Meanwhile, I think the defence industry is worth GDP wise to the UK something like 14 point 5 billion, something like that. Meanwhile, the fishing industry, as I said, is the equivalent of Harrods. Ludicrous. Absolute ludicrous. Things have changed so much. And they've talked about what shocks me is, as I said at the open of this video, most of the fishing industry jobs these days are not at sea, they are on land. And yet, these fishing industry bosses of again, both England and Scotland come out and said, oh my God, it's about preserving the future for these small towns so they can have these jobs at sea. Industries change, things move on, things go. Now, these small towns should absolutely be invested in other various different ways. And it is something that, I think every government that we've had for the past really couple of years has, well, past 3 or 4 really governments have failed to invest in, failed to sort of look after. You know what institution did look after them, did give them money, did care about them? The EU, multiple times. You can walk around these small towns like Grimsby or Scarborough or anything else like that, and you will find little EU plaques all over the place. Or you can look into like, oh, where did they get the money to do this? Or wait, gee, where did they get my money to do that? So I once again find it so hilarious that like these fishing industry bosses are like now terrified that Starmer's about to sell them out. No one is going to go to the wall for the fishing industry. No one would do immense economic damage. Even Boris Johnson, who said he would, throw himself in front of a steamroller for the British fishing industry, and then he didn't. you know, um, not going to happen. And one of the quotes, I can't remember who it was. It was either the English or Scottish fisherman guy of the Federation said it. I can't remember which one he said. He said, "Oh, the British people are like for and with the British fishermen." Don't really think they are. I don't really think they are. Like I say, you're done being a useful puppet for Farage. So Farage isn't going to come back. You've been used and abused by Farage, and I think if the British public were to sort of understand, like, oh yeah, we do this deal with the EU, helps us out, economically. Why on earth should we go to the wall for this tiny industry? It's just the reality of it all. I'm sorry to the people who are in this industry, but they should know it. The industry has changed. It has moved on. Most of the jobs now in the fishing industry aren't at sea, they're on land in processing. Things have changed drastically. And it is just shocking that they still want to keep peddling this nonsense about how the noble British fisherman is being betrayed. Anyway, as always, let me know what you think down below. And of course, as always, we'll see you all next time.